Okay, folks, got into a little internet kerfuffle earlier today when I saw this tweet by Mandy Summers, who is the publisher of Stuntman Comics. She says, "Okay, this is it. Gemshock issue 1 is launching tomorrow at noon, main cover by the legendary Dale Keown, with colors by Def Colorist. I can't thank everyone enough who came together to make this possible. Dreams come true in Comicsgate." And then there's the link to her Indiegogo campaign. Now, Comicsgate, if you're not familiar with that, it's kind of a conservative movement within comics that basically says, can you please get back to just telling good stories, good solid stories, and stop pushing social justice agendas? I took one look at the character for this, and after I got done staring at her boobs, I realized that I've kind of seen this character before. In fact, it's pretty obvious where I've seen this character before. This is basically the character Witchblade in terms of her armor and attire. She's got this jagged substance either extruding from her body or sourced in some other kind of mechanism or artifact in the case of the Witchblade, and it covers her essential bits and then, gives her some weaponry on her extremities. And that's pretty much it. So I'm looking at this and thinking, this is so incredibly similar. I mean, Witchblade has been around for almost 30 years. It was created by Mark Silvestri in 1995, and now you've got this Gemshock character. So, of course, with my standard tact, I got on Twitter and said, "Are you trying to get sued by the Witchblade creators?" Because I mean, I'm just looking at the similarity here and thinking, yeah, you were. I don't know if I'd let you get away with this if Witchblade was my creation. Well, that got me some nasty grams from Miss Summers, which ended in a temporary block, which she removed after I accused her of punking out. But it also got me some nasty grams from some of her fans, including this one saying, "I see no resemblance between the two whatsoever." Really? You really see no resemblance between the two whatsoever. Okay, I didn't realize blind people read comics. Witchblade didn't invent scantily clad heroines, nor does it have a monopoly on their existence, Mike. Scantily clad is not the problem. We're not talking about one person being in a bikini or one person being in this jagged, stone like substance that is protruding in various ways and offering jagged weaponry to be used. I mean, they're both in that jagged substance kind of weaponry type motif that only covers the naughty bits and the arms and legs. So this is a very, very similar look. But my favorite comment has to come from Ethan Van Sciver, who is like, one of the lead voices in the Comicsgate movement, and he just as tactfully says, "Are you trying to be a dipshit?" She grows diamonds and gems on her body. She isn't wearing a sentient, supernatural, gray colored gauntlet. She isn't anything like Witchblade. Really, she isn't anything like Witchblade, where if you go to the Indiegogo campaign itself, it literally says, if you enjoyed Witchblade, you'll love Gemshock. So I think there's actually supposed to be at least some marginal similarity, such that people who enjoyed the one book enjoy the others. But let's look a little closer at the Gemshock character because, of course, appearance is superficial. You really have to get to the origin of the character to be able to know what the character's about. And so if you look at the Indiegogo trailer, you'll see one of the most powerful relics, the Zero Stone, has found its new host. And let me just say, I cannot let that go. Oh my god, I hope your comics are better edited than your video trailers. So, one of the most powerful relics, the Zero Stone, has found its new host. Does that sound familiar at all to anybody who's knowledgeable about Witchblade? For one thing, isn't relic a synonym with artifacts, which is the category to which the Witchblade actually belongs? The 13 artifacts, and the Witchblade actually requires a human host. Zero Stone has found its new host. Yeah, these are basically the same character. I mean, I'm sorry. That's just. There's going to be probably a lot. I mean, it's definitely not Sarah Pazzini in the one role, and whoever the hell is wearing the gemstone in the other role. or the Zero Stone in the other role, but you've got the same basic concept behind each of these characters. You've got the same basic look. They're the same basic character. And, even if they weren't, even if the concepts behind them were like night and day, it doesn't actually matter. One of the most famous copyright cases in all of comic books, of course, was Superman versus Shazam. Now, if you look at the origins of these two characters, that yes, they absolutely look similar on the surface. I mean, their costumes aren't exactly the same, but you get the same vibe coming from each of them. Now, Superman's origin and Shazam's origins, they really couldn't be more different. You had Superman, who is an alien from the planet Krypton, rocketed away as a baby when the world exploded, and then landed on Earth and was powered by the yellow sun of Earth and has all these powers as a result of that. Shazam, totally different origin. He's a homeless kid. He's lured by a stranger into a subway where he's introduced to a magician who gives him the six powers of Shazam whenever he says the magic word, and he also gets a buff adult body out of that. I mean, you've probably seen the movie, and it's a decent movie. Um, Now, the fact that these characters are like night and day in their origins didn't matter at all when it came down to copyright infringement and the ability, and but more importantly, the ability of one company, a larger company, to drain a smaller company dry of funding. DC, which was National Comics at the time, sued Fawcett Comics, who was the owner of the Shazam copyright, and basically said, "Hey, you ripped off Superman." And here's what actually now they didn't win that lawsuit. They didn't win the lawsuit saying that there actually was a copyright infringement. I think the most that they said is that some of the stories that were told between Superman and Shazam were similar enough that there you could look into copyright infringement there. But as far as the characters go, they're separate enough. But it didn't matter because the whole lawsuit drained Fawcett Comics of so much money that they basically went belly up. And DC actually bought the rights to Shazam. And so now DC owns Shazam as well as the rights to Superman. And so you've got both of them under one tent now. This same thing, this idea of just suing the competitor out of existence. In more recent years, we've seen the same thing play out again. In the mid 1990s, we had Defiant Comics, which was the product of former Marvel editor in chief Jim Shooter, and he came out with his first issue of Plasm. Now, Plasm soon had to change its title to Warriors of Plasm. Why? Because Marvel, his former employer, was coming out with a title that was entirely unrelated but was called Plasmer. And so Marvel started threatening lawsuits saying, "You're infringing on our trademark." Now, there was no similarities whatsoever between this character and the characters or the concept introduced in Plasm, then Warriors of Plasm. But it didn't matter. Marvel sued them anyway and drained Defiant Comics of hundreds of thousands of dollars to the point where they couldn't function anymore. And Defiant Comics went out of business. So it doesn't take much to trigger a lawsuit. It only takes superficial similarities. And nobody should understand this more than Ethan Van Sciver himself, who decided to come up with a concept called Rainbow Brute. It is a hyper masculinized Rainbow Bright homage. I want to say ripoff, but it's more like a parody. And it's probably protected on the grounds of parody, but nevertheless, uh, you see how the name is just one letter away from the original character, which I believe Ethan Van Sciver actually did try to get the original rights to so that he could make this a kind of an official publication. But when he failed at that, then this Rainbow Brute character had to gradually change its name from Rainbow Brute, one letter difference, to Rainbow Brute with a Reign Rain at the beginning, and eventually landed with Rainbow the Brute. So when you have somebody who's already taken such great pains to avoid copyright infringement claims, the idea that he would downplay the superficial, and I would say which run deeper, similarities between these two characters and say, "Oh, there's nothing to worry about here," is kind of irresponsible. So, with that in mind, I'd like to go ahead and point everyone to the links in my video description. I am going to link to the Indiegogo project for Gemshock, And I'm also going to link to Mandy Summers' Stuntman Comics. Now, why am I doing this? Well, because, she might need a good lawyer sometime, and it'd be nice if she had some funds to do it with. So, if you want to go over to Stuntman Comics and buy some of her incredibly overpriced merchandise, then by all means go ahead and do so. And by the way, I'm not saying that any of this is bad stuff. I'm not saying that Gemshock will not turn out to be a good comic book. I've actually looked up the artist who's working on it, and he's pretty good. So you might actually enjoy this stuff. I'm certainly not trying to dissuade anyone from buying it or appreciating it. I'm just saying that if I were somebody who were in Mandy's corner, I would have taken one look at this character's design and saying, you're running a risk. And maybe you want to kind of embellish this character somewhat to the point where that risk is not as self evident as it really plainly is. So, anyway, if you buy the comic, please tell me how it turns out. I'm kind of curious to know. I'm Mike Partika. Thank you for watching, and do subscribe in case you want to catch more of my content, and I will talk to you later.